Isn't it so true that when you're expecting to hear something and you don't, you have that moment of awkwardness? We're like, what's wrong? Like what's happening? It's so funny when we were actually doing this as a team. There was a couple moments where I'm like, I don't hear anything. Hey, something's wrong. Like as they were building this for us, it got me, and I'm like, oh, this is my series. I got to teach this. Today we launch a new series about something very mysterious, and it has no connection to Halloween. It just falls to good timing. It's mysterious in the sense of that sometimes it feels very ambiguous. It feels very like, how do you know? Sometimes you can be very skeptical. But have you ever heard someone say this to you? Or maybe they just said it publicly, God told me. I don't know, whenever someone says that, I feel like it's like one of those yellow cards in soccer. God told me. You're like, oh, really? Yeah. He did, right? And when someone says God told me, I sometimes am like, I lean a little towards skepticism first when I hear those statements. I'm less interested in what he told you. I'm more interested in how you heard him. Like, where were you? Were you sitting by the ocean and something whispered to you, Were you laying around and all of a sudden the clouds started forming into this miraculous word, that gave you direction or insight? Did you have like a near end of life situation where you got this picture or image? Like, did you see Jesus? Like, I go to all these very suspicious things. I want to know, like, how did God tell you? Like, where were you? What were you doing? Like, that's what I want to know. And there's like more advanced variations of this. God told me to tell you something, like, ha ha ha. Well, why don't you go tell him to come tell me what he told you? I'm sorry, I get a little suspicious, like, sorry, please forgive me. But I lean there. I lean there because I'm like, what do you mean he told you? Like, why can't he tell me? Is it a secret? And usually, just being honest, like when I hear these phrases used, which I tend to kind of refrain from, and the reason is because it's usually been abused. Like these statements have been made so that someone can justify bad behavior. Well, God told me. Sometimes they've been used to shut down criticism, to silence people. People use the God told me card to manipulate others for personal gain. Really, it's a lot of times it's used, or at least when I've seen it used, it's a control or power, authority to exert over somebody. Well, God told me, he didn't tell you. This look at me kind of situation. And so whenever I hear it, I'm like, oh gosh, like how do you respond to someone who pulls the God told me card? It's kind of like an unquestionable statement. Well, if God told you, then I guess I got to do it, right? God told me to tell you to give me a Ferrari. A red one. With like camel leather interior. Anybody listening? No, right? This can be confusing, even dangerous. But in all honesty, on the other hand, when searching for inspiration or direction, when searching for like answers in life that like are for the here and the now, that are real, when you're struggling, when you're desperate, you begin to wonder, is it possible to actually hear from God? Maybe you're in a season and you're desperate. Like you just long to know, are you here? Are you present? Are you see what I'm going through? If so, could you do something? Like fix it, maybe solve it. Maybe tell me what to do. Like we begin to search. We begin to cry out because we do long to know, can I hear him? And it's interesting in that season, you begin to question and doubt. Like someone says to you, God told me, you're like, well, if you heard from him, can I hear from him? Am I doing something wrong? Like, do I get on my knees? Are my eyes not closed? Maybe I should close my eyes. Am I doing it in the wrong place? Like, do I need to be somewhere like special? And then if I'm not doing something wrong, is there something wrong with me? Like, if I made God mad, is he not listening to me anymore because I've done something wrong? Oh gosh, what have I done? And then you start replaying. Like, it's this really interesting thing that our mind goes through when we hear the God told me card, because we acknowledge that they heard from him. Can I? If you're new to church, like, first of all, we're grateful that you're here. Like, I don't want this to be mysterious or weird. So that's why I'm kind of trying to debunk it a little bit today. But you could probably be very honest with yourself and say, if God does still speak, wouldn't you want to know what he sounds like? Like, how do you distinguish it's him, not just my brain conjuring up thoughts or the food that I ate last night, you know? Like you could be honest and acknowledge that if he speaks, you would want to know what he sounds like. Like, what's he interested in? What does he care about? And for the follower of Jesus, let's be honest with you. When we hear someone use this God told me card, if we're honest, it usually reveals some insecurities in you. I've been raised in church my whole life. Like the fake it till you make it thing has been a part of my, listen, I can act just as good as you need me to act. Someone says, God told me, and I'm like, oh man, yeah, he told me something like that too, you know? Like, I didn't hear anything. But because they heard him, I got to hear him right. I'm a Christian. I follow Jesus. I'm supposed to, yeah, what did you hear? What did it sound like? Okay, thanks. Yeah, very similar situations for me too. In fact, almost identical. I could repeat what you just said because I can't make up anything else. A lot of times, it surfaces our insecurities. If you are a Jesus follower, you've been around people who've done something or experienced something, and you're like, man, like, how do I experience that? Like, how do I get in on that conversation where I feel or sense or hear God tell me, reveal to me something that I'm looking for, searching for, desperate for? That's what we're going to talk about for the next 3 weeks. How do we hear from God? Now, this series is titled Here I Am because we're going to look at the story of Moses. And Moses, his story's in the book of Exodus, but when Moses' story begins, really begins when God shows up, he reveals his name to Moses. And the name that he gives him is I Am. Now, I just want you to know, I'm not going to go super deep here, but this name, I Am, is super powerful and super important to us today that God spoke centuries ago. So as we read through these stories, and as I tell you this story, as I simplify it and break it down and bullet point it, please know this. By me just walking through it and talking because I have years of reading this story or hearing it or speaking it, by no means am I simplifying it or making it smaller than it is. God showed up. He revealed himself. He spoke. And just so we're clear, the New Testament teaches us that he is the same God yesterday, today, and forevermore. The same God that showed up to Moses is willing and able to show up to us. So does God still speak? I just want you to know we believe, yes, he sure does. Maybe, just maybe, there's something that we need to do. So we jump to the story. Exodus will be hanging out, and that's a brief overview. I've got to do this because I feel like I'm not giving you adequate information if I just jump into the story. So Exodus is the second book of the Old Testament. It's one of 5 books that make up the first 5, the Torah. What's really cool and unique about the Torah is that children being raised Jewish or in the nation of Israel, their schooling would have been to remember this, but not only remember it, memorize it. Can you imagine memorizing 5 books of the Bible? Can you just think for a moment what it would take to memorize Genesis? Did you just think about it for a minute? I've got the first one down. In the beginning, God created. And then it gets a little fuzzy from there, all right? Can you imagine quoting it, saying it from memory verbatim? That's what these kids were raised with. I mean, they didn't have books to walk around like we have. They didn't have printing presses. They had hand scribed documents that they were being taught and shown, and then they would read it and memorize it and have to rehearse it and speak it. These first 5 books are extremely important for our understanding. So Exodus is actually like the continuation of the first book, Genesis. In Genesis, we learn the creation story and the fall of man. And after the fall of man, God begins this process of starting over. And he starts over with this guy named Abraham. Abraham and Sarah, they have a son named Isaac. And if you hang out with me for like another month and a half, every Christmas, I'm already thinking about this. I go through the kind of story, the lineage, the process to Jesus. And Abraham and Sarah's son Isaac is the beginning of the road to Jesus. It's absolutely incredible. But they have this son named Isaac. Isaac has some sons, but one of his sons' name is Jacob. So Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the patriarchs kind of the faith. Okay, so we looked at these people, these men, these families as like the beginning foundation of what we're going to build upon leading up to Jesus. Okay, so that's just information for you to have. You're welcome. Jacob has a son. He actually has sons, but his youngest son, Joseph, is not very liked by his older brothers. You might know this story. He's then sold into slavery, okay? So just so you're all on the same page, Abraham has Isaac. Isaac has Jacob. Jacob has a whole bunch of sons. One's name is Joseph. Joseph is not liked. He's sold into slavery. You must hate your brother a lot to do this. Sells him into slavery, and the story begins to unfold crazily. Joseph, in slavery in Egypt, begins to earn favor. And the next thing you know, he's earned favor with Pharaoh. Like the leader of Egypt has heard of this guy, brings him into his courts, gives him a place of honor, dignity, and leadership. So Joseph went from slave, hated by family, to now leader of the most powerful nation of its time. And during this time, a great famine happens. Food is scarce. And the nation of Israel begins bringing people into Egypt. And these brothers who sold Joseph into slavery come into Egypt for food, and they find their brother Joseph. Joseph, with his leadership with Pharaoh, brings the whole nation into Egypt, provides for them so that they survive the famine. The book of Genesis ends with Joseph's death. The nation of Israel is still here in Egypt. Years later, Egypt realizes kind of what they've got going on here, and they make the Jewish people, this Hebrew nation, they make them into slaves to begin doing all their labor. They're taking advantage of them to conquer and to build. And now we find God's people in captivity in Egypt. And Exodus begins with the story of Moses. Moses is born Hebrew. So he's born a slave under Egyptian rule. His story is like the people who came before him, crazy. There's a great persecution happening. Death is upon them. And his mom didn't want to lose him, so she puts him in a basket in the Nile River and floats him. Can you imagine? Putting something you love so much, your own flesh and blood, in a basket and saying, I hope you make it. I hope you survive. Well, the story gets amazing. She floats her son down. Pharaoh's daughter is in this river, sees this baby in a basket, takes baby Moses, adopts him, becomes his daughter. He's now raised as Egyptian royalty, as a prince to the most powerful man in the world. As he grows up in this Egyptian royalty culture, he sees his people and what they're experiencing, their persecution, and out of anger, one day he murders an Egyptian slave master. Out of fear of his adopted father, he flees to a little country called Midian, and we pick up the story of Moses right here. Before he does the crazy cool stuff that we've all heard of, like, rescue the people with all the plagues, or cross the dry ground of the Red Sea, or bring the 10 Commandments to the people of the nation of Israel. Before all those really cool things happen, we find Moses scared in this little town minding his own business, afraid every day of like, what happens if Pharaoh shows up? What happens if he finds me? And he's minding his own business when one day he does something really good. He stands up for some young women who are being harassed by some men acting like boys. And he stands in and was like stop. Like you can see there's something in Moses' heart that cares for people. No, he should not have murdered somebody, but his heart was so enraged by how his people were being treated as slaves. Same is true here. He sees these young women being mistreated, harassed by these so-called men, young, immature, not grown up, not raised right boys, and he stands in and he protects them. Well, this choice that he makes impresses the girl's father. His name is Jethro. Jethro's so impressed by his choices that he brings him in, gives him a job, and gives him one of his daughters to marry. And this is where we pick up in Exodus chapter 3, and I didn't open my Bible yet, and please forgive me, my favorite book ever is falling apart in my hands. So I'm gonna try to hold it and read it to you guys at the same time. So give me a second. I guess it's a good thing that it means it's used, right? Right? That's what I'm gonna tell myself. Exodus 3, starting in verse 1. It says, one day, Moses was tending the flock of his father-in-law, Jethro, the priest of Midian. He led his flock far into the wilderness and came to Sinai, the mountain of God. Now, this is just history, but it's very intriguing that he's doing his job, minding his own business, doing what he's trained to do now, what he does daily. And he comes to this place that's no big deal to him. But this is the same place that God will eventually bring him back to. So just so we know this, like God uses all things. Like he's not a God of mistake. He's not a God of just happenings. No, he's meticulous. He's thought out and planned, and he executes with perfection. This so-called mountain that he's just hanging out by is not by accident. No. God is going to use it greatly. But nonetheless, he's at this mountain, the Mount Sinai called Mountain of God. And verse 2 says, there an angel of the Lord appeared in a blazing fire from the middle of the bush. Moses stared in amazement. Though the bush was engulfed in flames, it didn't burn up. Now, let's just, so we know this. If Moses knew that was an angel, consuming or burning, he would have ran and hid, scared him. But because he revealed himself in a flame was a very unique thing in Hebrew culture. Flames meant something. It meant either judgment or refinement. And because flame had this deeper meaning, it caused Moses to be intrigued enough to want to research what's happening. And this is just tangent side note for those who are new to the Bible. If you don't think God exists, I just want to beg to argue with you. Men today are the same that they were thousands of years ago. I'm fascinated with fire. I just love it. As a young kid, 10, 11 years old, me and a buddy were playing with a book of matches. And he had an acre of land that never got built a house on, it was just trees, and we were burning little piles of leaves. I didn't know this, but when you burn a little pile of leaves, it burns out. Not out, it goes out, it spreads. And our little pile became a ring of fire, and it was clearing land. My little 5-foot ring became a 10-foot ring. We realized we've got a problem. So he ran and told his friends, his parents, and his parents called the fire department, and we cleared the land for them. 1 acre cleared. I love fire. But most boys do, right? I hope I didn't give any ideas. I'm sorry. Gosh. Don't play with fire until you're 25. I don't know, 21, 18, something. Wait. I'm sorry, Amanda. But nonetheless, so here we go. I love fire. And it's just something amazing to me. I've been around fire and fire pits now my whole life. I love fall because I get to burn fires, right? And you're much smarter than me. I know you are. And you can tell me the science behind this, but but I don't care. I'm always going to be amazed by fire. This weird, translucent, orange, glowy thing that produces massive amounts of heat. Like how? Like what does it do? I know it's gases and all. I know the technical, but it's amazing to me. And it's amazing that it's orange, not teal. You know, it's not another color. It's not black or purple. It's orange. And then when it's really hot, it's blue. How? And how does it consume? Like, how does it catch and start? And I'll be honest with you, sometimes I start fires and I can't get it to burn for my life. It's the most frustrating thing in the world. It's like, burn, you burn. That's what you do. Burn, and it won't burn. You know, like, come on, you know, like your wood's wet. No, it ain't. It's been dry for a year, dang it. You know, like, I don't get it. But I can sit and watch it and be amazed by it because there's something about it. This past weekend, I got to start our first fire pit in our backyard. In 2020, Jamie and I were bored because it was 2020. And we were at home and we're like, oh, let's just pour concrete around our backyard and put a fire pit in the ground. You know, it was awesome. And so I have this fire pit that for 9 months is really just the catch-all of all the twigs and branches, you know. And we had a hurricane recently, so it's like a big catch-all. It looks like a big dead bush in the middle of a concrete patio, right? And I was so excited. I took one of those cheater logs and stuck it in the middle of it, and I lit it on fire. And then about 5 minutes later, I had a torch in my backyard. You know, like a 10-foot flame was burning as I just stood there in awe of what man-built fire. You know, like, yes, I felt great. But you know what's so unique about my fire is in about 3-4 minutes, what was there was gone. It was absolutely demolished. It burnt so fast. Like next thing you know, I'm like, oh gosh, it's no more fire. Go get more wood. Like it was gone. But Moses' fire was different. As he walked along, he's hanging out, he sees this fire that's burning. And it's in the middle of this bush, but the bush didn't consume. It didn't engulf in flames. It didn't burn up. So it created this deep amazement from him. That's what he says. This is amazing, Moses says to himself in verse 3. Why isn't the bush burning up? I must go see it. Now, there's something very intriguing in this scripture. And English destroys Hebrew all the time. In the Hebrew, there's 2 words that make up this phrase, I must go see it. It's sir and Rhea. And these 2 phrases are very significant to Moses' choice. We sometimes tend to think he's a guy who saw fire, right? But it's way more than that. It's actually very important to understand that 2 things happen in this choice that he must go see it. Sir means to turn away from. It means he was actively doing something. He had a job. He was busy. He was maintaining. He had a quota. He had something to accomplish, and he had to leave it. To go see this burning yet not consumed bush, he had to turn away from his responsibility in front of him. And then Rhea, give his full attention to something else. That's way more important than he just got distracted, right? No, there was some active decision-making happening in Moses' life. As he did what he did every day, as he moved along herds and took care of cattle or livestock, as he did his job for his father-in-law, to care for his family, as he did his busy work, something so unique happened that he had to turn away from his responsibility and give his full attention to what he was seeing. Verse 4 is where we see kind of the change of events. When the Lord saw Moses coming to take a closer look, God called to him from the middle of the bush, Moses, Moses. So this whole series is about God speaking, right? And now we've heard he spoke. But he spoke when Moses turned away from his everyday things, his busyness, his task, his to-dos, his list, his if I don't, someone won't, if I don't, it won't get done. He turned away from that and gave his full attention to God, his full attention to this burning bush, and God spoke. Moses, if you forget everything I say today, could you just hold on to this statement? Because I believe it's true for most of us. Maybe not all of us, but most of us. Isn't it true that when we want to hear from God, we're actually trying to get his attention, not give him ours? Like I wish I could claim that. It's not mine. If you want my notes, you can have them. Write that down. Pull your phone out right now. Screenshot it. Put it somewhere in your everyday. Change your wallpaper to this. May that be a reminder to you just every single moment, day of your life. When we want to hear from God, most of the time, we're trying to get his attention, not give him ours. Let's just play this out for a second. When my kids want me, they start off with the word dad. Dad. I have this gift where I can totally not hear you. Selective hearing. It is a miraculous gift. Ask Jamie all about it. She loves it. I'll look this way when I say that. I hear dad. And it's not even me, it's mom. But dad. So, oh my gosh. Yes, right, dad. And if I don't give them my attention in like the 35th dad, it moves to Chris. Chris. Yeah, you're right. I've heard that one longer, so you might have a better chance of getting me. And then out of frustration, they moved to Christopher Dale, which that name is reserved for two women, my mom and my wife. And it usually means you have messed up now. Get yourself together. But when my kids start using it, it's out of desperation to get my attention because they believe, as we all do, when we need something, we don't give our attention. We do whatever it takes to get their attention. And sometimes, isn't it true that when we want to hear from God, what we're doing is trying to get his... Do you hear me? I'm calling, I'm crying, I'm praying, I'm writing, I'm giving. Everything that you say, I'm trying my best. Do you hear me? Can you answer me, please, today? If not today, tomorrow. We're trying to get his attention. We're doing everything we can. Do you see? Have I done something wrong and you're ignoring me? Very seldom are we giving him our attention. You see, we want God's attention because we've exhausted every other thing in an effort to accomplish the goal ahead of us, to get through the experience that we're going through, to escape whatever's happening, to overcome our past circumstances. We're doing everything we can in our power and our will and our strength to get us through, and it's not working. So now it's, God, it's your turn. You hear me? Most of us, like Moses, we're focused on something, building our future, climbing the corporate ladder, running from our past, maybe just pushing through, trying to get through if I can just get through today, tomorrow will be better. If I can just get through this year next, if I can just get us to this place, then we'll be fine. You're just trying every day, the mundane, the routine, the get up, go to work, come home, go to bed. You're just trying to get through, hoping that one day it'll be better than this. But nonetheless, you're focused. You have your mind and heart set on whatever it is ahead of you. And I wonder, and this is a we, not a me, not a you, it's a we. I wonder if we don't hear from God because we don't have enough space or time to just be present. We don't have enough margin in our life to slow down, stop, and listen. Maybe we don't have the the willpower to put down what we're holding on to in order to just be present with him. If I'm like, I usually am, so welcome to LifeBridge. I'm very honest, and so just give me a moment to confess. This past weekend, Jamie and I took the kids with some friends to the mountains. We were in like North Georgia, Blue Ridge Mountains, and the house that we're like staying at is up. And it's not like, like volcano like mountain. It's just a high mountain that your gravel roads, it's a little spooky. It's one road. So if someone's coming down and you're like, oh gosh, you're going to run off the side of the mountain. But we get up to this house, and this house has 2 back porches, and one of them is just it looks over this beautiful valley. And in the distance is more mountains that are just majestic, like so beautiful that when the sun rises behind you, you see light slowly coming down the mountain as it comes up. You get to watch darkness. You see the silhouette of the mountain become this beautiful, lush orange that turns to green as the sun rises. It's just spectacular. Like I get to see, and I'll never take it for granted. I get to see the sun rise and set around the ocean all the time. I live here. But to watch it come over creation, over the mountains, is just something unique and special. To watch it dissipate the low-lying fog, it's just a moment. And so every morning, we have the privilege of getting up when it's cold, with a warm cup of coffee, our Bible, we're sitting out there, and we get to watch this happen. And throughout our time there, I would find myself getting distracted. Because see, at LifeBridge, we're on this fast from social media. And if you're not a part of it, you can join it. Text the word FAST to 912-414-8416. You can check it out on the website. But nonetheless, we're on this fast social media because I felt it was very important we take a break from social media during the season of an election. And so when the fast is over, so will the election be, hopefully. And so we're breaking from that. And so I don't look at social media. But a lot of times when we stop one thing, we just pick up another, right? And so we're in this beautiful, majestic mountain scenery, and I find myself occasionally disconnecting, playing this card game called Solitaire. My kids are like, "You're old, Dad," And every once in a while, internally, not by force of people around me, not even the kids making fun of me being old. I just have these little moments of for real, Chris? Here you are in this beautiful, vast, peaceful place. And you're playing a card game by yourself? For real? So many times, we do put down things just to pick something else up. Maybe we miss hearing from God because we can't put down the things we're holding to long enough to actually hear from him. It's almost 8 years ago, Jamie and I began praying a very specific prayer. Hey, God, help us teach our children that following you is an adventure. And we'd spent 6 years doing ministry at this church, and I'd kind of come to this interesting place where I knew God was present. He was doing something. He was speaking. I just didn't know what it was. Whenever my dreams stop, not like sleeping dreams of what God is doing and what he's going to accomplish, I usually know that he's getting ready to transition or move me around. And so I just finished this massive project, launching this kind of just this really cool thing for our church, our community, building the infrastructure, setting a plan for the future. And when we finished it, it was now what do I do? And I tried things, but just never really felt inspiration. Felt like I completed what God gave me to complete. And so we began praying, hey, what's next? There's no more visions, no more dreams, no more things that I can see. And the prayer was, hey, we want our kids to see that following you is an adventure, that sometimes it's difficult to go where you call us, but you always show up. And we were specific. Please don't take us out of the country. We'd love to stay. We have all of our family and friends in this area of Atlanta. We'll go wherever you want, but, could it at least be warm, and the ocean, maybe, I don't know. Michigan called. And we were like, yeah, that's not in our that's not in our sphere of the world we want to go to. But we were praying this prayer. Hey, like, we want to see you do things. We want our kids to see us trust you to do hard things. And so if Michigan's an option, we'll just walk through the doors that you open. Doors kept opening and opening and opening. And next thing you know, we're like faced with this decision. Are we going to go to Michigan? Like, the job's on the table. Here it is. It's offered. And there was this moment where it was like, okay, God, what's next is completely in your hands. Like, we don't have family or friends there. We don't know these. We only interview with these people. We don't know them. Like, we don't know this community. I don't know any of the names of the roads. They have different grocery store names than we have, you know? Like, it's great. Meijer, Meijer? What's Meijer? They don't like Walmart. There's not Chick-fil-A. They don't believe in Waffle House. Like, Staples in my security, they don't have them, you know? I said, what are you doing? I'm taking you somewhere that you've never been. And to go there, it was complete surrender. Like, there was nothing we could hold on to. There was nothing we could grasp. And it was in those moments that he was the most clear as he began to lead us to this adventure, this journey as a young family, trusting that you're going to have to make a way. You're going to have to provide. You're going to have to resource us with friends and people who want to be family, because it's all gone. It was amazing that when it got quiet, when it wasn't like a clear next step, he began to speak the loudest. It was when we didn't know what to ask for. We didn't know what to say. We just had to follow his lead that we heard him. We saw him. We followed him. As I replay these big journeys for our family, moving to Michigan, moving here to help start this church, moving back to Atlanta, moving to Michigan, moving back to Savannah. In all these moments, there was some really common things that happened that could be easily missed that I just want to give you today. I believe these things help us hear God. And the first is this: space and margin. Do you have space or margin or time to actually sit and be quiet? To listen. I don't know about you, but a couple things happen when quietness shows up. In the middle of the day, if my house goes quiet, it means something bad is happening. You know, oh gosh, what's being destroyed? Walls are being painted, things are being broken. Quiet is not always the greatest thing. Or this, when I actually have a moment to get quiet, I lay down in my bed. I love my bed. Okay, it's so comfortable. It's laying in a cloud. I lay down, I'm comfortable. It's quiet, nothing, no movement, no noise. Just as I get to that peaceful quietness, my brain starts going, did you take your medicine? Oh, dang it. No. Did you close the garage? No, I didn't do that either. Did you say goodnight to your kids? 2 of them. You should probably go see the other 2 of them. Did you turn the air conditioning off? Is it on? Are you using electricity right now? Did you pay that bill? Are the lights on outside? Why didn't you wash the car today? You said you were going to wash the car. Oh, man, did you sign that paperwork for your kids? You got to get up early in the morning. Did you set your alarm clock? I can't stop. It's finally quiet. And my brain is just rattling off all these things. It won't shut up. And I'm I have all these exercises that I've learned in counseling, picture a whiteboard, put the thought on it, and then erase it. I'm doing it. I'm erasing everything off my mental whiteboard. I'm trying my best to silence my brain. And it won't stop, because just as I get silent, all the thoughts that I have submerged or held off on thinking about, they start to surface. You see, the first thing I'm asking you to do today will never be easy. But if we want to hear God, we have to begin practicing Sur Rea. We're going to begin practicing daily this choice to turn away from the busyness, the task, the to-dos, the things that got to get done. We're going to have to turn away from them for a period of time in order to give God our full attention. And when you start this process, just so you know, you will realize how many thoughts you have submerged in your brain. Just how many things you forgot to think about today. It will take work. So here's my question. Will you, this week, take 5 minutes each day and practice silence? Just being for real, off of practice and experience, don't do it at bedtime. Your brain is weak and you'll be in a different path. Do it in the morning after a good night's rest. Get up and just practice 5 minutes. Maybe you go on your back porch. Maybe you go sit in your car in the driveway. Maybe, this might sound weird, but it's actually very common in biblical times. Maybe go in your closet, shut the door. It's dark, and just sit in silence. Start with these words. Here I am, God. I want to hear from you. Here I am, God. I want to hear from you. And that's it. Don't bring your agenda. Don't speak your mind. Don't tell him what you got going on today. Listen, far too often we approach him and trying to get his attention. Instead of saying, hey, my attention is fully yours. When we position ourselves this way, we increase our opportunity to hear from him. But 5 minutes is all I'm asking. 5 minutes each day. And that's just a reality check for you to realize how hard this is going to be. It is not an easy fight. But if you want to hear the voice of God in your life, if you want him to speak into what's happening and what he's doing audibly, emotionally, speaking through his word, if you want to hear him, you must give him your attention. Create space and margin. Listen to this. In John 10:10, Jesus says, I came to give you life and life to the full. There's a very vast difference between life to the full and filling up your life. There's a massive gap between the two. Life to the full comes when we give God our attention. Trying to get God's attention is because we filled our life with a whole bunch of stuff and we can't hear anything through all the noise. The second thing is this: you must turn away from. You're going to have to sacrifice something. Sleep, work time, you name it. Your day is your day. To get 5 minutes of solitude, quiet space, you're going to have to set something aside. Statistics reveal that you and I are way too busy. So to stop busy means to not be productive, but that's what we have to do in order to hear God. Turn away from. So what are you going to do? When are you going to do this? You're going to have to shut something down in order to turn to what God's doing. This story is not over. In verse 5, God speaks these words. He says, do not come any closer, the Lord warned. Take off your sandals, for you are standing on holy ground. And theologians have speculated what God was wanting from Moses when he said take his sandals off. But one of the recent guys I'm following began to share this idea. He began to tie this story, Exodus 3, to Genesis 3 creation story. In Genesis 3, Adam and Eve, they sin. They disobey God. They eat of the fruit. of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. They're like, it's good, it's awesome, this is amazing. And all of a sudden my eyes are open and hey, you ain't got no clothes on. What's happening, And they go hide and they cover because they recognize what they had done. They felt guilt and shame for the first time. This theologian ties what happens in Genesis 3 to what happens in Exodus 3. He says, listen, feet are a euphemism. That all throughout Old Testament, New Testament, even to this day, feet are one of the first things that we cover. Think about Old Testament days, they didn't have roads, disgusting, dirty, livestock, you stepped in things. Like it's one thing to step in it with your shoe you can wash off. Can you imagine stepping in something barefoot? I'm gonna puke. Oh my God. Can you just imagine like that? They are like, quickly cover the feet, protect them, do something. Feet are a euphemism. It's one of the things we cover because guilt and shame and sin have entered the world. His argument, his posture, his teaching is that when God brought Moses close and he told him to take his shoes off, it was this idea of God saying, you don't have to cover up around me. You don't have to get yourself together to enter my presence. You don't have to act like you got it all together to come and sit with me. He's revealing that though he is, I am, the God who created the heavens and the earth, he's revealing, hey, listen, just as much as I am that God, I'm also a God of relationship. I'm a God that you can draw close to. I'm a God that you can give your attention to. You can sit with me. You don't have to hide. You don't have to cover up anymore. This morning, so many of us, we silence the voice of God because we're so ashamed of what we've done in our life. We have so much guilt on who we are, the choices we've made, and we actually push God away. May this story serve as a reminder that he is a God that you can come to and sit with, and he doesn't require you to clean up or cover up or even act like you got it all good and fine. He says, no, come to me. In fact, in my presence, you're fully exposed. You're fully known, and I care about you. I love you. Stay in my presence. Many of you this week need to try to begin letting go of that idea that you've got to be this in order to be in God's presence. To turn away from it is actually you letting go of what you've been using, what you've been manipulating to help you cope with the fact that you're not present with God. If I just stay busy, I don't have to face that. If I just keep doing, I don't have to remind myself of that. If I just stay this course, I can just leave all this over there. But if you stop for a moment and turn from your busyness, you might have to sit in some stuff that you don't like. You might have to remind yourself or remember some things that you wish you could forget. But just know this. When you bring it to the presence of God, he's like, you don't have to hide. I know, and I love you, and I care for you. Just sit and stay with me. The last thing I'll say is this. Giving your attention is not like I did Chris's challenge this week. If you want to hear the voice of God, giving your attention to God is something you must begin practicing now and never stopping. One of our values here is practice, not perfection. When you're trying to become perfect at something, just means you're going to quit real quick because you're going to realize, oh, I'm not perfect at this, I'm done. But practice is something you're willing to continue doing because you get better. Would you start this week practicing, turning away from and giving your attention to, sitting in silence saying, God, here I am. Help me hear you. God, here I am. What do you want me to hear? Here I am, God, I'm listening. And then shut up. Practice that. 5 minutes. And just see what God does. But don't quit. This is just the beginning. We'll pick up right here next week. Let me pray for us. God, thanks for the day. Thanks for your truth. Thanks for your word. God, thank you for the story of old that reminds us that we are so similar today. that we are just as busy as Moses was. We are just as in awe of the things of that world that we are of this world, of that time and this time. But God, you are the same yesterday, today, and forevermore. The same God that showed up and spoke to Moses. God, you are still showing up and speaking to us. We're just too distracted, too busy to hear from you. Help us this week. Stop trying to get your attention and start giving our attention to you. God, help us sit in silence and just ask you, what do you want me to hear? And God, help us begin to decipher and work through all the things that surface that distract us, all the things that remind us of our past or our future, remind us of our faults or failures and mistakes, and help us sort through those, God, so that we hear your voice. Speak in that still, small, silent moment. Remind us that you love us, that you're present, that you care, and that you want us to experience life to the full in you. Help us practice silence this week in order that we might hear your beautiful voice. We love you. In your name I pray. Amen. Hey, as we take our conversations to the lobby, if you would like someone to pray with you, our prayer team members are going to come forward to the front of the auditorium. And once everyone exits, stay seated and they'll come and pray with you. Love you guys. You're dismissed.